2021. The first item is call to order. So when I call, or sorry, the first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was informed, Russ, are you able to share a screen? Or give us a, or would you like to lead us? Oh, there we go. All right, so if everybody can stand, and I will lead you on the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. The next item is the roll call. So when I say your name, if you could please confirm that you're in attendance. Commissioner Welch.
Here.
Commissioner Hexford.
Here.
Commissioner Doerr.
Here.
And Commissioner Osland.
Present.
And Commissioner Cronin is also present. And then I received word from Commissioner Holt is under the weather, and Commissioner Davis is on a family, a family, I guess, outing or on the East Coast. They both gave a lot of notice to their departure. So would somebody like to make a motion to excuse their absence?
So moved.
A second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is on to the guest business. So this is for anything not on the agenda. If anybody in the audience has anything to say, now's the time. I will remind you that if it's related to the public hearing and the proposed amendments to the marijuana facilities, do note that you will have time to speak later in the meeting. So this is for items not on the agenda today. So if you do have something, please raise your hand through Zoom and the floor is yours. All right, hearing nothing, we're on to the next item. I'd also like to, I forgot to welcome Councilman Steve Ewing in the audience. So thank you, Steve, for joining us tonight. The next order of business is the action items. So we're going to approve, or the next item is to approve the minutes from the May 5th, 2021 meeting. So I'll give all commissioners a time to review that. And if anybody has any concerns or edits, now's the time to bring them up.
Chair Cronin, I would, and it's a simple addition, but we also put in the minutes on our last meeting that we wanted the sunset date included in that. It's included in the packet, but the minutes included the buffer, what we were anticipating doing there, Canopy, which we will discuss tonight, and then the sunset date was included in that. So just a side note to a slight omission, perhaps.
Thank you, Commissioner Hexford. Does anybody else have any other comments before we make a motion? All right, with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from May 5th, 2021 with the addition that the sunset, or sorry, the sunset clause was discussed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. All right, now on to the next order of business, and that's to continue the public hearing from the May 5th, 2021 meeting. And that's the proposed amendments to the marijuana facilities. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Planning Manager Levitan for the staff presentation.
All right, thank you, Chair Cronin, David Levitan, Planning Department. So yes, tonight we're here for a continued public hearing for land use application 2020-0189, which is proposed amendments to Lake Stevens Municipal Code, section 14.44.097, which deals with marijuana facilities. I just have one or two slides. I'll just have it on there. I'll share my screen just so we have it up there. All right. So this is a continuation of a public hearing that started at your last meeting on May 5th. Just as a reminder, as far as the contents of that meeting, staff provided a general overview of the original proposal that had been discussed during several work sessions. The scope of that then changed kind of at the last minute based on some input that we received from the applicant and from the state that basically determined that childcare centers as protected by the existing 1,000-foot buffer, that term does not apply to in-home daycare providers or family daycare providers. And so the scope of the amendment as recommended by staff changed kind of within the last week or two prior to the public hearing to be focused more on differentiating between family daycare providers and childcare centers. Staff provided some optional amendments for the Planning Commission to include, which unfortunately I did a poor job of labeling, so they were a little bit hard to follow. But basically adding a buffer between marijuana facilities and family daycare providers was one optional amendment that was included in attachment 2. And then a citywide limit on processing facilities, originally proposed as 30,000 square feet was what staff had offered as an option. And then that spurred some discussion during the deliberation component of the May 5th public hearing. Staff did recommend continuing this public hearing to May 19th if Commission had opted to incorporate any of the optional amendments, which they did, and which is why we are here tonight. Commission took public comment, deliberated on the proposed amendment, and provided direction on desired changes, which have been incorporated into attachment 1 of your packet tonight. And so Commission did reopen the public comment period, so people will be, members of the public will be able to provide public testimony this evening prior to the Planning Commission's deliberation and any recommendation that they make. So just as an overview of what has changed since the last meeting and what's reflected in attachment 1, staff has revised the code amendment based on Commission feedback to include a new buffer of 1,000 feet between marijuana facilities and family daycare providers. That's in 1444.097. Also added a new citywide limit of 17,000 square feet on standalone marijuana processing facilities. There currently is only a cap on marijuana producers or grow facilities. So this would implement a separate cap on standalone marijuana processing facilities. And I did just want to clarify, and we can go over this in the deliberation, Commissioner Hexford brought up the sunset date that was discussed. My understanding was the desire to remove that so that this was permanent, that the cap was permanent and would not go away at the end of 2023, which was an optional amendment. So just when we get to deliberation, we do want to make sure that we capture the Commission feedback properly. So what we're recommending for the Commission to do tonight is to take public comment, deliberate on the proposal, and discuss any desired changes to the language that's included in attachment 1. And then to make a recommendation to City Council to approve land use application 2020-0189. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Planning Manager Levitan. With that, we're on to the commissioner questions. So do any commissioners have any questions for staff?
Chair
I
Cronin,
do. I was hoping, well, was there someone else that, Russ, were you jumping in?
Yeah, I wanted just to add a couple of points on some public comment that we'd received before the hearing tonight. There had been one letter the commission should have received from Tom Matlack, and his comments mirrored the provisions as drafted in the code for your consideration. And then Commissioner Davis had submitted comments as well that said she was in support of the amendments as drafted, again, capturing the commission's discussion from the last week. And I apologize that my camera's not on. I'm not sure why it's not working.
Thank you, Russ. Janice, before you ask your questions, Russ, do you have a at the end of Mr. Matlack? At the end of his statement, it says the combined processing and production facility square footage should be combined with the total standalone processors. Do you have any kind of clarification or comment to that? Like as far as them being separate or anything like that? Because I think that will be one of the concerns that might come up. So that's the only reason I ask you to clarify.
I think we had made the distinction between the two in light of the original citizen initiated application, that they were trying to make a distinction between a standalone processor, which is someone taking a raw product and turning it into something else through extraction or some other means. And all grow operations are licensed as producer processors, because the act of them harvesting, trimming, initial packaging also is processing. And what we were trying to do is make the distinction between someone who's taking the secondary product rather than the very first handling of it. It's really up to the commission at this point how they'd like to handle it. When the city council had dealt with this and the planning commission several years ago for the first time, the city cap was a combined cap of 100,000 square feet, and it was pulled apart in subsequent revision. So that's totally up to the commission if they wanted to make a recommendation to put those back together. The 17,000 square feet as proposed captures the existing facilities that would not make them non-conforming at this point.
Thank you for that explanation. All right, any commissioners have any comments for Russ and staff, or Director Wright and staff?
I do have a couple. This is Commissioner Hexford, for those that are not on video, although you're used to me by now, making questions. Back in January, when this originally came to us, we were at the 70,000 square foot threshold. That was something that was negotiated back in 2017, if I remember correctly. And it wasn't differentiated. So there was a 70,000 square foot threshold for marijuana in its whole, regardless. And now there is a standalone. And my concern is a couple different concerns. The threshold was confirmed by Director Wright in February during our meeting that this facility would butt up against that 70,000, and this would be the end of marijuana in our city. I've since heard and been a part of meetings where this is going to now be a hallmark for Lake Stevens, this industry. So that is concerning to me. But that canopy also falls into some ambiguity in the packet that was sent out tonight. So January was weird, February was weird, it's been weird since then. And then tonight, if you go into the packet that we see, and I just want this for edification before we go into public comment, and I'm hoping that we receive a lot of it. So the size and number, when you go into our packet tonight, the changes is limited to size to tier 2 production facilities. And then if you go down to number 5, it's the maximum amount of space allotted for state licensed standalone marijuana processors. It's at 1,700. So it's a 1,700 processor in addition to the 70,000. And if so, that puts us in a tier 3, not a tier 2. According to the Washington State code that you linked us to in our packet. So I'm concerned that the math doesn't add up. And I am simply asking for clarification so that this is, there is no loophole, there is no ambiguity, and also this is super transparent, especially right now going into an election season, that those that will be voting on it other than us that are advisory, I understand that, will be held to a clarified understanding of what it is that we're advising them on. So with that, I will hold any other comments that I have in my notes until we've gone on to public comment. But thank you for listening to me.
Okay, this is Director Wright again, and I think Dave and I will tag team on this question. So the first point, the existing code as adopted in 2017, or actually I believe 2016, says size and number. The maximum amount of space allotted for state licensed marijuana production will be limited to 70,000 square feet. So production is the grow operation. As to tiers of production, the state establishes tiered licenses on the size of individual facilities. They haven't set a cap on a city. That was something Lake Stevens chose to do, set this cap of 70,000 square feet. So the tiered production would be any individual facility, ranging from a small facility, and I don't remember the exact tiers, but under 5,000 up to 10,000, over 10,000, something like that. So it doesn't change what the city is doing. We're still not accepting tier 3 facilities, which are the largest production facilities. And then the cap as proposed is a distinction between a standalone processor and production, which was not captured in the prior suite of changes to our marijuana code. Other than the council did make the distinction between production and processing and only adopted a cap for production. And I think my comments from earlier in the year about the 70,000 square feet have been corrected, where that was sitting at about 50-some thousand square feet for production. And the distinction is that the facility that had brought about this discussion was solely for processing.
Okay, so, and again, I don't want to beleaguer this, but it's also an important point. So production being at 70, production and retail, right?
Retail is separate. City has one licensed retail location by code, and that's it. That doesn't affect the cap for production.
So production at 70, but your point earlier was that this would cap out this facility. And I don't want to make it about this facility because it could be, you know, any facility, but the applicant that is the precursor for our discussion for the last 6 months has been causing me to look at what we're doing with our light industrial district, what we want it to be, and what we are allowing for an industry without precedent, more so than any other industry in our city. So I'm curious about that. So this is a standalone processing that takes it out of the 70,000 square foot production from before. We're still onto one marijuana retail location, but that's at the bequest of any city government as sitting now or elected in the future. Correct?
The ordinance as written today allows for one retail facility. You'll recall the last time we looked at marijuana was another citizen initiated request a couple of years ago when the state bumped up Lake Stevens' allocation of licenses to 2. At that time, the Planning Commission and City Council held to staying at one retail facility. That has not changed. The 70,000 square feet is only for production. The current code as it's written could allow unlimited processing. By adopting the 17,000 square foot cap, puts a metric in place that Lake Stevens could not exceed for processing standalone processors. So that's an addition to the code. That is a new restriction that is not in the current code. And obviously any city council can make changes to the code upon a public hearing. Now we're into the future, but the current set of regulations allow one retail, 70,000 grow, and there is no current cap on processing.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you so much. I have one more question and then I'll send it back to chair. But so we can only do industrial, light industrial with our pot mecca that is being perceived for our city. Is there any light industrial perceived to be on the new annexation from the Machias annexation?
There is general industrial uses going on in that area and potential new development coming in. Nothing that's been applied for yet, but we've definitely met with some folks out there, and there's no interest in this industry that I know of at this point.
But it would allow itself to that conversation where those applicants wanting to go that direction.
Certainly if they fall under the current guidelines.
Or they have support of the current city council.
I'm not going to speak for the city council, but under the current city guidelines, there is still capacity that the newly annexed areas could take advantage of if they desired.
Interesting. So Canopy is variable. Interesting. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you all for that discussion. Before we go to the public comment portion, do any other commissioners have any other questions for staff?
Actually, can we make sure that everybody that is waiting can be let in? Evidently, there are some folks that are waiting to be let in by the host. Is that accurate?
Jenny, do you have a handle on if there's people?
There's no one in the waiting room that I'm seeing. Where are you seeing that, Janice?
I just got a text, but this person said that she was in, so thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Hearing nothing from the other commissioners, I'll save some of my stuff for after I'm interested to hear some of the public comment, and then we'll have a time to close it after that. But so the next portion, I'm going to pass it on for the, is anybody in the audience that wants to make a public comment? Now's your chance to do so. If you could, I'm kind of new to Zoom to this, but I believe you can raise your hand. So if you can raise your hand, then Jenny, if you don't mind, as they raise their hand, if you can call on them, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Sue F. would like to speak.
Hello, my name is Sue Fernan, and I live here in Lake Stevens, and this definitely is not my specialty, but one of the things in it is my specialty, children care centers. I've raised two sons. I've used daycare, all of their preschool on. I am struggling with a citizen initial use code because they needed less buffer. And this is a technicality because when I was looking as a mother, I looked for a child care in the area, the price, and someone loving for our children. I didn't look at 12 and under, meaning how many, or 13 and over, meaning a commercial daycare. And if this is voted in, to me, and I may be wrong, it would not allow a commercial daycare to go in that area. They would have to follow the 1,000-foot buffer because they come under daycare, a recreational center, arcade, one of the things that many people in this city are asking for, areas where kids can go to, a bowling alley. And as I read it, so Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, they would follow under the 1,000-foot because the one entity is requested to have a lower buffer, and you broke out what daycare is by that rule. I also am hoping that whoever the person is that has the daycare in the area has been contacted and talked to either by the Planning Commission or the city, because I'm also involved in another issue in my own area, and only 2 of 20 people even knew of what was going on. So that's my concern, that if the buffer is reduced for the one citizen, the other people that still fall under number 4 would have to still abide by the 1,000-foot buffer, where the one citizen, if it is passed, would be reduced. And I think it's reduced to no buffer. So that's my question. But I do know that many people in Lake Stevens are really asking for activities for families, meaning bowling alleys, things like that. And if we move towards the marijuana in this area, I don't think many family-oriented people will move into that area. Again, it's not my decision, but thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Sue. Is there any other, we will make our comments based on those as it goes on, but for the public portion meeting, is there any other guests that also has a public comment?
Can you hear me? This is Eric Turner.
Mhm. Yes. Go ahead.
Sorry for the hair. It's just one of those days. Hey, I was able to join with you in your last meeting on May 5th and appreciate the chance to come back and add some other comments. Just maybe 2 things to add into the comments from last time. If we're talking about a canopy size for the combined growing and selling operations of around 100,000 square feet, I would encourage the commission to consider that that's about half the size of our high school from a volume standpoint. And that's a significant amount of area, right? The amount of plants you can grow in that amount of area is more than enough to supply a very large swath. I say that from the perspective of growing up. We owned a commercial greenhouse. We sold strawberries, and ours was a small, several hundred square foot operation. 100,000 square feet between the selling and the growing is a ginormous amount of area that, whether we're selling it here or not, is going to attract a lot of things, as this other person just mentioned, we don't want here. As I drive up and down 20th Street and look at what we have here and what we need as a city, as far as businesses coming in, and as far as other forms of revenue that will provide better tax generation than just homes, you know, the businesses is what I would be expecting the Planning Commission to be looking for. And if this in any way inhibits us from getting those businesses, we should probably consider that very strongly in this. But and then I would close with this, is that I think that the sizes that are already allowed are too big. If there is a way for the Planning Commission to put an absolute cap on that, that wouldn't be able to change in the future, I would be looking for that, knowing that Lake Stevens is going to continue to annex and grow. Really do not want this to be the pot center of the Northwest, which is what it feels like is happening from all the conversations.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any other guests that would like to make public comment?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Poston. Can you hear me all right? Okay, thanks. So,
Yes.
yeah, I just wanted to come on here and express my opinion about the marijuana industry in Lake Stevens. I am against anything that would promote the marijuana industry in any way or help to grow it or expand it. I have a family, I have children in this community, and I'm looking for more family-friendly businesses to come here and to expand here. And I think if it had to compete with marijuana facilities and shops, it would be extremely detrimental to the community, as well as, I think some people think that it will increase jobs or be beneficial for the community. But for me, all I have to do is drive down Highway 9 in Clearview, and the place is covered in pot shops, and it's done nothing but drive businesses out of that area and just bring down the whole quality of that area, even though there's beautiful homes around. Not exactly someplace you want to just go out with your kids and take them for a walk surrounded by all of the pot shops. So I'm very much against any increase in marijuana, be it facilities, stores, anything like that. So I'd like to go on record with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any other guests in attendance that'd like to make a public comment? All right, hearing nothing, thank you to all the guests who shared comments today. I'd like to, at this point, close the public comment portion of the hearing by motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you, everyone. And now before we go on and continue to any action or anything like that, I do, given the comments, I wanted to give every commissioner a chance to gather their thoughts, and hopefully we can talk through this to the point when we can get to a motion.
Chair Cronin, if you'd like, I could provide just a bit of context in response to the public comments, just a little bit about the chronology of the amendment, because I know it can be confusing, especially the last couple of weeks.
Please do, and thank you for offering that.
Yeah, so just in response to the public comments, just a little bit of a chronology. This was a citizen-initiated code amendment. It was driven by a specific proposal based on information that had been provided by the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board that indicated that this specific proposed facility within the Hartford industrial area was within the required 1,000-foot buffer of a child care center. So originally the proposal was to basically make the code more lenient as far as reducing the required buffer between child care centers and specifically standalone marijuana processing facilities. Over the couple of months that the Planning Commission has discussed this through a number of work sessions, just in the last couple of weeks, the applicant was informed from the state that their license was actually approved, that the protected use, the family daycare provider was not subject to the 1,000-foot buffer in state law in the RCW. And so that basically kind of changed dynamically changed the scope of the amendment. It went from basically trying to reduce our protections to a discussion as to whether we needed to increase protections that don't currently exist within the Lake Stevens Municipal Code, to try to kind of replicate the assumptions that have been made that family daycare providers were subject to that 1,000-foot buffer. So at the last meeting, based on staff's presentation and feedback from the commission, kind of the tone and tenor of the amendment went from reducing the required 1,000-foot buffer to implementing a new 1,000-foot buffer specifically for family daycare providers, which are not covered by state law, but which cities are able to implement through local ordinances. And so that's what we're proposing as part of attachment 1. This would be a new 1,000-foot buffer that protects family daycare providers that doesn't currently exist. Similarly to how there is no existing cap on standalone marijuana processing facilities. As long as somebody can get a state license currently, they would not be subject to any local limit on the number or square feet of processing in the city of Lake Stevens. So based on commission feedback at the last meeting during the public hearing, staff has now proposed that 17,000 square foot limit. So those are two additional protections that actually strengthen our marijuana code as far as implementing new protections. And just for a little bit of clarification on uses, the buffer basically it works one way. So a marijuana facility needs to get a license from the state of Washington. They go through the Liquor and Cannabis Board, they apply, and then they're informed whether they meet all of the state provisions, and then they're required to go through any local process that's involved, including whether cities have adopted ordinances for any local regulations. If a protected use wanted to go in less than 1,000 feet from an existing marijuana facility, they wouldn't have to go through that licensing process. They could choose to be within 1,000 feet. That doesn't necessarily mean that they would want to be within 1,000 feet, but there's nothing that would preclude them, other than the fact that the majority are general industrial and light industrial areas generally don't have commercial or mixed use zones around them. They have residential zones or other industrial zones around them. So there really aren't a whole lot of locations for a lot of these uses to go in. So there's not a whole lot of opportunities to create that inherent conflict. And so just wanted to provide a little bit of context on that. And I'm happy to respond to any questions from the commission.
Thank you. So I think from my point of view, I agree with a lot of the concerns, that we've had here regarding the city and the future of kind of marijuana in Lake Stevens for that Hartford area. So I hear the people in the crowd's sentiment on that wholeheartedly, and a lot of the people I speak to, do also share that concern. What I will say regarding the new code amendments is I do think it's in line with what we discussed previously. I think it is kind of getting conflated, and there's not a right or wrong answer there as far as the maximum on the marijuana production of 70,000 square feet, that's already implemented, and this new 17,000 square feet is actually for the processing facilities to provide greater restriction there, that's not currently in the code. So while there may be issues on the overall thresholds of that marijuana, I don't think it's or the overall thresholds of that number and with those concerns, I don't think that's necessarily exactly what we're fully speaking about here, unless you didn't want to, unless you wanted to combine them all, obviously, which would be something else to talk about. But I think as far as I'm concerned with regard to the proposed amendments, I think it is what we spoke about, and I think I'm in support of them as is. Do any other commissioners have any other comments?
Mike,
I just wanted to mention, thank you to those of you who took the time to speak this evening. I share in your concerns also, from the people who I spoke to who did not attend this meeting, out in the community. As I think it was Jen Poston brought up, the Clearview look is not a good look. And it's also a look that is shared by that section of Highway 99 north of Linwood. And I think, while I can't speak for, everyone, and I certainly can't speak for all the commissioners, I don't feel that's a look that Lake Stevens wants, in its community. So these code amendments that have been brought to us today, I think go a long way to address what became an inconsistency or an oversight in the code, to reinforce the limits that we thought were there, and to ensure kind of a high standard that I think we expect in our community. So I'm in favor of these updates and modifications.
Thank you, Commissioner Dorr. Do any other commissioners have any other comments before we move along?
Yeah, I do. I'm in favor. You know, we had this discussion at our last meeting and staff was good to put in what we were all thinking at the time. For Planner Leviton, was there something we needed to look at for a sunset provision, or is that not in it? I didn't notice it in my markup.
Yeah, and so that was my question at the beginning, was whether there was a desire to have that sunset. My understanding at the last meeting, we had proposed that in the optional language, that there would be a sunset where that cap on processing facilities would expire in 2023 unless otherwise amended. We took that out based on the fact that the feedback that we received, my understanding was that commissioners wanted that cap, that 17,000 square foot cap, to be permanent, not to sunset at any point where it would go away and where that protection would disappear. So we're happy to add that in if there are commissioners that want to include that sunset date, but my understanding is that they did not want to have that.
Agreed. That sounds right. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something there. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And I'll give any other
Chair
commissioner one
Cronin,
last chance.
Chair Cronin, before you close or ask for any kind of motion, I appreciate the dialogue. Again, our commission is far more informed and vocal than it's been in the past, and I appreciate that. There are some twists and turns in this that are concerning. There is a vision here that is concerning to me. However, for the process tonight, I would support the change in wording of the family daycare center versus daycare center, but with no lowering of buffer. That 1,000 square foot buffer stays the same. And I bring that up because to Mr. Levitan's comments, everything that we do right now is for now. But if you look at it as we annex more people in, as we expand, as we change zoning, as we introduce, retail in Frontier Village, like we spent a year on in 2017. All that we're doing right now is right now. And I want to make sure that we're making this as clear and transparent as possible, because anything that happens in the future is going to be predicated on what we decide right now. So those two things I would agree to. I still have concerns about the canopy and how that sizes up. I don't think that the math adds up to me, but production and processing were always one in what my understanding was of what was decided on in 2016. I would hope that the city council would unite those two, because an industry in our city is an industry, regardless of what it does in that industry. I would hope that as much attention would be given to this as needed. And then the alternate of that is, I would hope that the city would give as much attention to other industries that are wanting to come in. We had a comment tonight about bringing something in for the teenagers or businesses that want to expand and bring in other entities within their cover. And I would hope that the city would spend as much time and attention to those as they have spent to this industry, to this applicant. And so for the process tonight, I would approve those two, 1 and 2, as stated. However, with the precursor that we'll be watching closely, because I think that this is something that can run off the tracks and has very quickly.
Thank you, Commissioner Hexford. Yeah, and one last comment, just I do think that sunset, having that cap and the sunset date, is both good for the city as far as kind of dipping your toes in the water of this and managing it. And I go back to, just where this property is located at, where we're at. I know this isn't ideal, but there's literally 90,000 square feet that could be developed directly next to it. And that's 90,000 square feet of the production. Sorry, are we talking production? Sorry. Yes, of the processing facilities. But so it just shows how quickly this can happen. So I think that having those dates in there and having to have public hearings and things like that in order to change the code, rather than just have it, evaporate and have people plan for that, I think is very important. So anyway, with that, I think I'll open it up one more time for any commissioner comments before I close the hearing by motion.
And Chair Cronin, I'm happy to provide a little bit of response as well to try to clarify a couple of things if once commissioners are done commenting.
Perfect. I'll pass it on.
Yeah, so just to, in response to Commissioner Hexford, so when the city first adopted marijuana regulations, it was actually, I believe it was back in 2014, it did adopt 100,000 square foot cap that applied to both production and processing. It was a couple years later in 2016 that they differentiated, that the council through its ordinance differentiated between processing and production. It lowered the cap to 70,000 square feet, but that cap then, and as it currently does now, only applied to production, and it basically eliminated the cap on processing. We currently have about 54,000 square feet of licensed producers or producers/processors in the city. So there's about 16,000 square feet left of capacity on the grow/processing side of things. There is about a 1,500 square foot licensed standalone processor, and then the applicant is entitled through their conditional use permit, which they're vested to the previous version, the existing version of our regulations. That would take that number of licensed standalone processors basically right up to the 17,000 square foot cap that we are proposing. So upon, if this were to be recommended and then adopted by the city council, there would be basically no more capacity for marijuana processing, and there would be about 16,000 square feet left of marijuana production. That would apply to the existing light industrial areas in Hartford. It would apply to the new Machias industrial area now that that's been annexed into the city. So there would only be about 16,000 square feet less just for facilities that have a production component to it. And then just in response to the sunset date, so the sunset date, just to clarify and to make sure that everyone understands, the sunset date, if we add that in there, and then if the city council does not make any future amendments to the municipal code related to this section, that cap would go away. If commissioners are comfortable with kind of having this be a trial in lieu of having it be kind of a provisional ordinance or a temporary ordinance, the sunset date is a way to kind of, put your toe in the water to see if we'd like to have this cap for a certain amount of time. And then it would go away if the code wasn't amended by December 31st of 2023. But based on the feedback that we had received, the guidance from commissioners that we understood was that they wanted to make this cap, the 17,000 square foot limit citywide on standalone processors, to be permanent and not to expire at a certain date.
Thank you, Planning Manager Levitan. Yeah, and to clarify my comments too on the sunset date, I'm in agreement with it written as is, where I think when I say dip my toes in the water, I'm more talking about having the Hartford dedicated to, fully to marijuana in the future, and more getting a feel for how these years work. And then in order to change that in the future, it would have to go through a process instead of, just expiring. But either way, I appreciate all the feedback on it. And I think all your comments have been very insightful tonight. And I think with that, unless any planning commissioners have any, I think I've given everybody chances. So I think we're good to just to move on. So with that, I'm going to close the hearing by a motion. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll move.
All those in favor?
I'll second.
Oh, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then now we're on to the motion. So I think I'm comfortable in hearing everybody speak to make the motion, and I will make it. Then if I'll ask for a second, and if everybody's in favor, and we can go from there. So I'd like to make.
Chair, are you going to break it into two, or are you going to break those two into four?
I was going to make a motion based on numbers 1 and 2. Would you? I don't have a problem if you would like to lead the motion to like I heard your point, Commissioner Hexford, but I wasn't sure. It sounded as if you were okay with 1 and 2. I guess if you'd like to adjust a motion, you're more than welcome to take it on.
Are there any other comments that are that we need to discuss before we make a motion on anything?
I think that's a good question. Are there any other commissioner comments that you think pertinent in order to influence the motion decision? All right, so I think with that, Commissioner Hexford, would you like to say anything?
I will make a motion that we approve number 1, that we add the wording defining family daycare centers to the Lake Stevens Municipal Code 1444-079E4 as protected use requiring an 1,000-foot buffer with no reduction from marijuana facilities. And that is my motion.
All right, I'm in support of your motion, but I also, and I apologize to everybody. This is the first time I've had this situation happen. But so Commissioner Hexford, am I right to assume that you're not in favor of number 2?
I am going to make a motion to approve number 1 separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing that motion, I'd also like to make a motion, and it is adding family daycare providers, as Commissioner Hexford said, as a protected use requiring 1,000-foot buffer for marijuana facilities with no reduction for processing facilities. And then I would also recommend approving the established a citywide limit of 17,000 square feet on marijuana processing facilities with no sunset date, and the 17,000 square foot limit would account for existing permitting processing facilities in the city without committing any non-conforming situations. Do I have a second?
Second.
And then
I have a question here, because this is now starting to get confusing on what we're adding, what we're not adding. So F5. So if we're going to have 2 different motions, we need to vote on one motion at a time instead of taking 2 separate motions here. So if we're going to do so the first motion is for which one?
You're correct. So
My first vote. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, commissioners. I'll remove my motion. I apologize. That was my fault. So let's just go. If we can just revert back to Commissioner Hexford's motion, which is for which one? Is for number 1. She made a motion adding family daycare providers as a protected use requiring 1,000-foot buffer for marijuana facilities and no reduction for processing facilities. which I do agree with, but I also am in favor of adding the second one. So I will.
Commissioner Cronin, can I interrupt for a moment, please?
Yes, please.
So on the staff report, I believe what you're looking at were the two primary amendments that had come out of your deliberations, but that doesn't take into consideration all of the changes that were made in attachment 1 that includes those 2 items and then some other housekeeping. So it may be more appropriate just to go back to the recommendation at the beginning of the staff report for some guidance on forming your motion, which would be to accept the changes, including items 1 and 2 identified on the staff report as presented in attachment 1.
Yeah, so I can clarify on that. I apologize for the confusion. That 1 and 2 that's included at the bottom of the first page of the staff report and goes on to the second was basically just trying to summarize the changes that have been made since May 5th. There were additional amendments that were already included within what is now attachment 1. Those have not changed. Those 2 points were meant to summarize the items that staff changed based on commission comments on May 5th.
Thank you. And I see those here. So from that point of view, we're still on Commissioner Huxford's motion.
Well, I think what the staff is trying to say here is we can lump all this into one by saying approve the attachment 1 as staff has provided, and that encompasses everything that they've put in here so far. Instead of, if not, we're going to miss all the language changes and stuff and definition changes.
Yes, and I do see that on the recommendation. I'm just stuck here where I have a motion that only approves half of it. So I guess are we not accepting the motion?
Or the commissioner can pull it.
Commissioner Huxford, would you like to make I understand your concern, but you're leaving me in a position where I don't know how to appease what you're asking me without just pushing it through.
I certainly don't want to put you in an uncomfortable situation. I would like it split into 2 different things, regardless of staff's request. So my motion stands. If no one wants to support me on that, then I will stand alone.
Thank you, Commissioner Huxford. Well, with that, I would like to make a motion.
We still have a motion on the table, and no one has seconded it yet. But if no one's going to second it, and then we just let it die, then it dies. But we have to let it die first. So we need to ask a couple times if anybody's going to for a second. If none approaches, then it just dies on its own.
All right. Are there any commissioners that would like to make a second to Commissioner Huxford's motion? All right, so with that, I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to forward the recommendation to the City Council to approve the proposed amendments to LSMC 14.44.097 and 14.08.010 regarding the proposed amendments to the marijuana facilities. Do I have a second? As there's deliberation here, I'm going to go around and everybody can vote. Commissioner Welch?
Yeah, I was waiting for that motion, so I'm going to propose an amendment to that motion. So it'd be a separate amendment vote. I would like to, on top of yours, make the amendment to make a change to 14.44.097 F2. That would be under the size number 2 for the maximum allotted size for a production facility, and change it from 70,000 square foot to 54,000 square foot. That would now cap current production facilities as are, and would get rid of the 16,000 square foot that is still remaining that could still be brought into Lake Stevens. That would cap current production to where it is today and not could be added unless somebody were to come and change the law down the line. That would be my amendment. So that's my amendment, and I'm looking for a second and a vote.
I'll second that amendment.
And then I will go around and I will start. I agree with that amendment. Commissioner Hexford.
I appreciate the amendment, actually. I appreciate that very much. I say yes.
Commissioner Dorr.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Welch, for that. And with that, we have moved this on to the city council.
We have to take a vote on your motion as amended.
And then can I have a motion to approve Commissioner Welch's Commissioner Welch's motion with the amendments? Do I have a second?
I'll second the proposal of Commissioner Cronin with the amendment of Commissioner Welch.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry if I made that over complicated. I didn't mean to, but I wanted to add that in all of a sudden.
No, Commissioner Welch, I really appreciate that. That was something that I think if I had, as much as experience with you on it, I would have helped steamhead that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for that discussion. With that, and now we're on to the discussion items, and I'm going to pass it on to Director Wright, or Community Development Director Wright, on the update to the 2021 work program.
Okay, I just wanted to touch base with the commission sort of mid-year where we are on our work program. You're a good way through a lot of the items that we've set out. Obviously, we're working on the permissible use table. We've gotten through the SEPA categorical exemptions. You're most of the way through the lot status amendment. You've had some introductions to the comprehensive plan. Obviously, the citizen initiated amendment has taken up some time. And then I provided with you an updated table of your work program, just projecting out what things will look like for the remainder of the year. Again, I think we're in really good shape as we start heading into the second half of the year. We'll really start coming in with comprehensive plan amendments over the next few months, and the changes to the shoreline master program. Those are going to be probably the bulk of your meetings, or at least one meeting a month, and then any other code amendments that are left out there. Again, I just wanted to share some progress. Happy to address any questions about the schedule moving forward.
Thank you, Director Wright. Do any commissioners have any questions for Russ?
So Russ, do we plan on then finishing this permissible use table by the end of next month? Is that what the goal is? Or, I mean, for our side, then move to the council then, because since we're under second quarter?
Yeah, I'm recommending that it be completed in third quarter. And so that could be any time between now and September.
Okay.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, everything looks good. I'm looking forward to this. I think the city's on the right track just to clean up the code and make sure there's not any loopholes as the city continues to grow. So I think this is a good list, and we're on our way to, getting through it and kind of getting back to, some sort of normalcy after the last couple of years.
Russ, on the Hartford Machias Industrial Subarea Plan, says depending on funding, are we waiting for grants from the state or somebody on that, or is that funding being approved through the city? How's that funding being done?
Grant funding. So this project is going to be broken up into a couple of phases. The first phase is going to be a utility inventory to go out there and just find out what the infrastructure is. And with the latest Rescue Act plan dollars, we're hoping that we can allocate those funds for that study. And that would be very comprehensive to sort of set the path on highest and best uses for Machias and Hartford Industrial. So taking a look at the sewer lines, broadband internet, water supply, road condition. So that would be the goal this year. And also hoping to do a market analysis that visits our 3 current sub areas just to kind of check how they're doing, and then do a market analysis for this area as well. And then as far as going to a full-blown sub area plan, that does remain unfunded, and that might not be something we need to take that step. That might be something we can do in-house, but this infrastructure analysis is the key to making sense of our industrial area.
I know we're not into that deeply yet. Are we basically going to then combine the Hartford and Machias into basically one zone area? Kind of like we have, Frontier Village, and we have the Lake Stevens Center, we have downtown. Are we just going to then, is that going to be just everything associated to each other and be one lump area that the plan would be?
Essentially. So, at some point we'd like to probably rebrand those areas. So it's not Hartford and Machias,
Okay.
the Lake Stevens Industrial Park, or whatever the naming convention that comes out of that is. And right now there are 2 distinct zones. There is the general industrial and the light industrial. For all purposes, there's not a great distinction between those 2 zones. So that might be something that we look at in the future as well, to try to make some distinctions between those zones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question on marrying the 2, the waterfront task force findings and bringing that up to code, and then the Airbnb conversation that is slated for 3rd quarter of this year. I'm wondering if those 2 are going to marry, and if some of those people are going to be brought back to discuss that prior to that conversation.
The 2 will be separate. Obviously, we will want to hear from waterfront owners as it relates to Airbnbs, but that's a citywide issue, not limited to the shoreline.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director Wright?
Yeah, along that same lines that Commissioner Huxford just asked, would the Airbnb, would that be then a public hearing, or would that just be something people would have to pay attention to on an action item?
No, it will be, all of these will be a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll let commissioners
Say hi.
ask Director Wright any more questions in the next minute here.
Say hi.
All right, hearing nothing, Director Wright, is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, appreciate the time.
All right, thank you. And then now we're on to the commissioner reports. I will start. I'd like to thank Planning Manager Levitan. I thought that was very helpful. The SEPA video you sent out was very convenient, and sometimes it's hard to stay on top of things and follow some of those city meetings. So I appreciate having the ease that you sent in. That was very convenient. So thank you for that. And that is it for my report. Commissioner Welch.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Huxford.
I have someone that I want to introduce you to that just walked into my office. This is my neighbor, Gunnar. And he's been listening to the last couple minutes, and he's learning about how the city works. And so he's now convinced that he doesn't want to be volunteering in any kind of community service. No, he's just kidding. He's adorable and he's running outside. So there you go. I just taught him never to walk into my office when I'm on a Zoom meeting. So thanks, Gunnar.
Commissioner Doer.
No report this evening, thanks.
Commissioner Osland.
And no report. Thank you.
Thank you. And then now we're on to back to Director Wright on the planning director's report.
Great, thank you. So our wonderful clerk, Jenny Finrich, reminded me that I've been negligent in formally talking about Dave's promotion. About a month ago, Dave was moved up from a senior planner to planning manager, and that just represents the changes in the department and the growth in the department. And so he's been a great asset. I hope you all believe that over the last year, helping with the long range program and now taking on some additional supervisory duties. So it was great that we could bring him along and offer that promotion. And then some other issues I just want to go over really quickly outside of your work program. Staff has been working pretty closely with Snohomish County over the past few months on a few items. This year is the update to the countywide planning policies. So the the Snohomish County Tomorrow Planning Advisory Committee, which is key staff and directors of the different planning agencies in the county, are coming close to a vote on the countywide planning policies. And then those will get recommended on to the elected officials in the steering committee. Also closing in on the end of the buildable lands report. At the end of the analysis, several of the cities, including Lake Stevens, we've identified a few gaps that we'd like the county to address, specifically in the fast growing cities. Some discrepancies in the numbers, capturing a snapshot in time 2 years ago versus the development that continues to happen. So we're looking for them to develop some sort of a metric for the elected official or board representative to really understand the dynamics of that report as we project our growth targets. And then that's the next thing we'll be starting shortly, is working on a subcommittee with the growth targets for the county and the allocations for each individual city. So as soon as we move through that, probably in July, I would like to bring those reports to the Planning Commission so you can get a flavor of some of that other planning work going on regionally. That's my report tonight.
Thank you, Director Wright. And assuming nobody has any comments to that, I think that concludes our Planning Commission meeting for May 19th, 2021. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks.